Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Honshu. This was sent to me by Renegade Game Studios and is designed by Kal Malmyoja. Honshu is a map-building card game set in feudal Japan. Players are lords and ladies of noble houses seeking new lands and opportunities for fame and fortune. Let me show you how to play. So one game of Honshu lasts 12 rounds, and each round is divided into two phases. First, you choose map cards, and the player who placed the highest valued card picks first from those played. Then the players use the map cards picked to expand their personal maps. Each player must expand their personal maps to maximize their scoring possibilities. Manipulating your position in the player order will help you master Honshu. Now, at the start of each round, there's a card selection phase. Each card selection phase is played in ascending player order. The cards played determine the order of picking up the played map cards. So, let's say player 1 plays this card. Player 2 plays this card. Player 3 plays this card, and player 4 plays this card. So, in player order, each player will play one map card from their hands face up in the playing area. At the start of the game, you each get one of these starting cards, and some of them have production squares on them. So this one will give you a gray resource and a yellow resource. If you play your card at the start of a round, you can choose to place a resource cube on the card to increase its value. Putting a resource on a card increases its value by 60. Once somebody places a cube, any further resources played have to be of the same type if you want to increase the value of your card with a resource. Now, once everybody's played a card and a possible resource, a new player order is determined. So, that's when we look at the values on the cards here. This value is 10, 33. This is now 88 because of the resource, and 7. That means now, first player, second player, third player, and fourth player. Didn't change too much, but now this player is going to be the first. Now, with this new player order, each player is going to choose one of these map cards and add them to their building area. Also, any used resources are returned to the common pool. So let's say player 1 goes, I want this card. So player 1 would take this card, and they would add it to their area for the building phase, which I'll show you in a second. Then player 2 could either pick their own card or somebody else's card. Let's say they pick their own card. Player 3 picks, let's say, this card, and so player 4 is left with this card. That's how you sort of bid and choose for your map cards. Now, let's get to the building phase. Each player now is going to take the card that they selected, and they're going to add it to their map in a way that at least one square of the new card is either on top of or under a previously placed map card, and at least one square of the new card remains visible. So you couldn't slide it completely underneath, which that wouldn't do anything anyway. There has to be at least one square showing. It can be on top, so you could do this, or you could do this. It's totally up to you. It's going to depend on how you want to score. But as long as it's on top, or it could be underneath, that's a valid placement. The only exception is that lake squares here must always be visible. You cannot hide a lake square, ever. So let's say the player goes like this. Then a single matching resource is placed on any tile with a resource square, including this new card. And that's it. That's a round. Then whoever had the new player 1 card gets to start the next card selection phase. You place a map card down, put a resource on it if you want to increase the value. There are some exceptions, though, throughout the game. After the third round, the remaining 3 cards in the player's hands are given to the player on the left. After the 6th round, you deal 6 map cards to each player face down as their new hand. After the 9th round, the remaining 3 cards in the hands are given to the player on the right. And after 12 rounds, the game ends and final scoring takes place. So throughout the game, you'll be passing it to different players. That's essentially all you need to know about that. But the meat of the game, obviously, is how you score, because that's going to determine how you place your cards on there. First off, forests. Forests in the final scoring, each visible forest square you can see is worth 2 points. the town spaces here. In the final scoring, each town square is worth 1 point, but only the biggest town district of each player is counted. So if you end up making this bigger and bigger and bigger, let's say there's 8 of them and you had a town of 5, you would only get 8 points because you count the ones in the biggest region. The production squares, during the building phase, each new production square receives a matching resource on its base. You can use those during the card selection phase to increase the value, or you can deliver them to factories during the final scoring. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say as you're building your, it ends up looking like, I don't know, we can do this, and we can do, I don't know, something like this, okay? So, if you look here, this has a yellow production space, but this sort of like star symbol, that is a factory. And at the end of the game, each unused resource can be scored by moving it to a factory. And if you look here, these flower symbols represent how many points they'll be worth at the end of the game. So, if you start making matching factories for your resources, each one will give you certain points depending on what is on the square. For lakes, in the building phase, lakes, like I said, cannot be placed under other cards. They must always be visible. In the final scoring, each lake district is counted. The first lake square in each district is worth 0 points. But, let's say I expanded it out a bit. Something like, let's say this, and something like this, okay? Yeah, let's say this was our biggest lake. The first square is worth 0, but each consecutive square in the district is worth 3, so this would be a 6-point lake. You do that for all the lakes at the end of the game. Deserts don't do anything. They are only used as a tiebreaker at the end. There are optional end-of-game scoring cards. I'm not going to go into that yet. But just based off the classic rules, you score all the categories, like I said, 2 for each forest, 1 for each square in your biggest town, factories, lakes. Whoever has the most points wins the game. If there's a tie, the player with the highest number of visible deserts wins the game as a tiebreaker. Now, going back to what I kind of briefly mentioned, there are some optional end-of-game scoring cards. You can pick one at the start of the game and change up your game. So, for example, this card here, you may deliver 2 resources instead of 1 to each factory. Here's one. Each row or column of 3 consecutive forest squares gives a bonus of 4 points. Each 2x2 block desert is worth 5 points. So on and so forth. And I don't need to go through every single one. There's about 8 of them, but they all change the game in different ways. Like this one, each lake square is worth 2 points instead of the regular scoring. So if you're tired of the base game and want to change it up, you can always throw in one of these end-of-game scoring cards to change up the rules a bit. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. You're just sort of bidding for turn order, claiming cards, and putting them either under or on top of cards and expanding your little map. And that's pretty much it. So this game reminded me a lot of a game called King Domino. Just by the look of the cards, it looks very similar, I think. The bidding in this it's alright. You know, I personally didn't think it mattered that much, just because I felt like I could work well with most of the cards, if not all of them, that I picked up. There's enough flexibility in this game where you can put the cards under or over that it was actually kind of difficult to not find a good spot. There is usually something, you know, like a good spot for pretty much any card, just because you have so much freedom. Okay, I can go on top of this, under this, just don't cover lakes. Not that stressful, which is not a bad thing. But if the game really kind of makes stresses like, oh, it's so important if you bid first, but I personally didn't feel that way. I appreciate, though, that there is a light strategy to bidding on turn order, because, yes, you know, some cards are definitely better for your town than others. But I think the instructions sort of overhype how important that mechanic is. When it boils down to it, it's fun scoring points based off the different categories. You're just sort of prioritizing different scoring strategies, and I had fun with it. But I think what this game maybe lacks for me is that it doesn't have a lot of the same tension that other similar games have. In other games with a more strict placement, like King Domino, for example, the importance of getting exactly which card or tile you need is extremely vital. But in this game, I never felt that way. It was like, oh, I didn't get that one? This one will work. I can just do this, slide it here, and it's fine. But not to say the game's not fun. I think it's solid. It's enjoyable. It's very light territory building game, and I appreciate that the game offers those different sort of end-of-game scoring conditions to give you more variety. Because if it was just the base game, I think this would be pretty one-note for me. But with some of those other conditions, like, oh, okay, you can change it up, and I get it. But the decisions never became super crunchy for me. And I prefer games where I feel like your decisions matter way more, whether it's in the bidding part, especially in the bidding part. Because I think if the bidding felt more cutthroat, then it would be more satisfying of, aha, I'll play this and take first choice. Whereas in this game, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you can take first. I can take third, it's fine. It's still fun, and it's worth checking out if you like these types of games. I just felt it was a little light and not that... It didn't give me that sort of crunchy tension that I usually like in this kind of game. But that's my personal opinion. It's pretty good.